Hello there. Today I want to go over some of the differences between the Joytoy Warhammer Space Marines and the Mcfarlane Space Marines. Just to start out, here's basically a comparison between them in a long shot. And we also have a couple of old Marines, and of course a Primaris Marine that is both Blood Angels or Blood Ravens and Alpha Legion, just like my Mcfarlane. That just to give you a idea of their scope and scale between some of those. I'm going to do another video that's going to compare some of these with some other traditional miniatures like an Imperial Knight, a Wraith Knight, a couple of the Titanicus Knights. So I'll do a little video that just kind of has a comparison. But for this video, I really just want to focus on the differences between the Joytoy and Mcfarlane. Before I get into some of the specifics, I do want to just kind of get a quick rotation of the intercessors compared to each other. And as I go over these, I'm going to point out a few modifications, such as the plasma pistol here. This actually just came with a bolt pistol, but I actually took I think it was an Imperial Guard Lehman Russ tank. I think these were the plasma cannons on that, so I actually just took that cannon, chopped off the front half of the bolt pistol, and I think it makes a good size. The Joytoy Intercessor also came with a bolt rifle, and here's the size comparison between those two. Now for the Chaos Marines. And also at the end of the video, I'm going to kind of give some of my thoughts as to which of the two companies I prefer, whether it be the Mcfarlane or the Joytoy. But I just wanted to get a good size comparison between the two. I think there might be slight scaling issues between these two, because the Mcfarlane, which I think are pretty good scale between each other. If I compare the two Mcfarlane, it does look like the Chaos Space Marine is just a little bit shorter than the Primaris, which makes perfect sense. But when I compare the Joytoy, as you can see, the Chaos Marine is significantly bigger. It's especially noticeable in the backpacks, which, I mean, it's just a massive difference. Now, granted, this isn't just a traditional Chaos Space Marine. This is a Havocs champion, and the Havocs are toughness 5 in-game versus the Intercessors that are only toughness 5. So they are meant to be a little bit bigger, but when I've seen comparisons of the Havocs with just a regular Chaos Legionary, they're not that much bigger than a Legionary, and I've seen comparisons with the Intercessors next to Chaos Legionaries, and they are taller. So at the barest minimum, these two should have been about the same size, with the Havoc being maybe slightly bigger, but it's almost a head high taller, which is, I just think that's kind of insane. And I kind of wish I had known that before I bought this, because I wanted to have these two, since Joytoy is a little bit more expensive than the Mcfarlane. I wanted to get like your basic, your standard Space Marine, so obviously Ultramarines, and then your poster boy for Chaos, which would be Black Legion. So that's why I chose these two, and I wanted them to be roughly equivalent. So having some form of plasma and a chain sword, I thought that would make them fairly equivalent, but he looks so much bigger. But that's really my only complaint between these two. Obviously, another modification that you'll see is I did add these eyeball gems, which is something that I also used on my Mcfarlane here. So now let's really get into some of the other differences between the two, other than the scale. I feel like the articulation between them is roughly equivalent. The Joytoy definitely have more fiddly bits, like all of these little pouches and extra things on the sides of their belt, all those are movable, whereas on the Mcfarlane, these pouches are pretty much just molded onto this back armor, and this is all one piece. This back armor, this side thing, and that actually made it pretty difficult to paint because I had to kind of disassemble this, take the legs off to paint this, and when I assembled it, I actually scraped up a lot of the paint, which is actually why this guy has a lot of battle damage on him, because I was covering that up, but I think it's a pretty good effect. But that brings me to my next big difference. Obviously, the painting quality on these Joytoy is way better. They definitely put more emphasis on some of the shading, that sort of thing. But as a painter myself, I do still have some complaints. There still needed to be some touch-ups. For example, this gold is not really the gold that it came with. I actually modified that myself. I got some chrome markers from Amazon. And what I really like is the copper that this came with was astonishingly similar to the trim on this guy. So I was able to kind of go over all of the trim on him. I did gold on the ultramarine, and that gave them a little bit more of a shine and a gloss, which they didn't really have before. It's really going to be hard to capture this on camera, but I don't know if you can see the inside rim of the pauldron there. Just right on in there. I did not use any of that chrome marker, but I did on the top. So it just gives it more of a metallic look to it. Just a little extra emphasis. And of course, I painted the entire head on this red, put a skull on it, because I wanted this to be a sergeant. Since this is a Havoc champion, I wanted him to be a sergeant rather than just your bog standard intercessor. And the other complaint that I have, the other big difference, is that when I put that little bit of painting on these, I also repainted the plasma vents here. They were just kind of like an orangey red, but I wanted a purple. And that paint stays pretty well. Like there's no, it dried fairly well. Whereas I had this guy, I've had this guy for, I want to say maybe 2 years that it's been out. Yeah, I had this when it first came out, and this was the completely unpainted. So this is top to bottom, complete painted by me. But because it was gray plastic, you have stuff like the hand here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but all the paint is scraped off on the inside of the thumb. So really, this is permanently attached. There's no way, I'm not going to take this out because all the paint on the inside of the hand has just come off. And for the longest time, this guy was real sticky. Like, the paint was really tactile, even though I primed it, let it completely dry. I probably wasn't using the best primer. I thought I had learned from that mistake when I bought the... this guy actually was a Black Legion originally, and I repainted him to be Alpha Legion, but it was a painted version, and so I did things a little bit differently. So the black that's like on the inside of the hand is actually just the black plastic, so that's not sticky at all. And I just painted over most of this, which this guy is still kind of sticky. Like there's some areas, especially like in these areas here, that sometimes I'll get a little bit of silver paint still off it, and he still kind of feels tactile. If I really push down on some areas, it'll leave a fingerprint. That's disappointing. I don't think you'll get that with the Joytoy because they're made out of slightly better plastic. But in my mind, it's still not quite worth the double in price. These two guys were $20 each, and this guy was $30. This guy was one of the real cheap ones I found on Amazon, and then this guy was almost $40. And that's on the low end. A lot of the Joytoy figures are $50+. And I feel like they're good quality. I think I like their size, but I still had to do touch-ups. You know, for example, even before I put the gold or the copper chrome on this, the darker areas around the rivets, that was a wash that I did over that, and it wasn't like that. It was very flat. I also didn't like that things like this was like real bone on the this is basically the way the guy originally came, obviously, and he didn't have a helmet either. So the helmet that I did, I just made that helmet myself out of a knight's head and just a bunch of green stuff because I didn't like the way the head was. The detail in the eyes is kind of a shame too, though, because the detail in the eyes on this guy was actually really good. It was kind of creepy because I even had like a gloss around it, but I still thought it was hideous, so I wanted it to have a helmet. So, what are my thoughts on which of the two are better? I definitely think that my opinion is biased. I am always going to touch up my models or figures or what have you. I can't just get them out of the box and not do anything else with them. So, in that regard, I think that the better paint jobs on the Joytoy isn't as big of a bonus for me. It may be for you. If you're only going to get one or two of them, and you're not going to bring a paintbrush or some markers or anything like that, and you're just going to leave them as they are out of the box, then probably the Joytoys are the one for you. They're a little bit more on the pricey side, but if you're not going to touch them up at all, it's probably worth it. If you're going to collect multiples and you are going to touch them up, I would go for the Mcfarlane personally. Aside from the issues with the plastic being a little bit more rubbery, and that's what caused the issues with some of the paint. I've heard some other anecdotes from people who have painted them with better primers that didn't have that issue. So if you're all in on painting, I would go with them for having the bigger, especially like on the shoulder pads and some of the detailing. That was just really fun to do that painting. And you can get more of them. I mean, these two cost less together than this one guy by himself. So you can probably get more, but the variety is less. There's only a couple of Chaos Space Marines. There's quite a few regular Space Marines, and then you have things like the Sisters and Gene Stealers, Orcs. They have some variety, but if you really want variety and you really want to pick out that one particular character that you like, then probably the Joytoy is the one for you. So I definitely like them both. These were my thoughts. Definitely stay tuned. I'm going to do another video that does some more size comparisons and really focuses just on that. But until next time, may the Force be with you.